Bene, salve, benvenute e benvenuti. Io sono Federico Mento, sono il direttore di Ashoka Italia. È un piacere aprire questo ciclo di seminariale dedicato a Changemaker Communities, che è un tema su cui Ashoka sta lavorando da molto tempo a livello globale, e quindi avremo modo di ascoltare l'esperienza dei nostri colleghi del Messico, che saranno oggi presenti in questo appuntamento, e nella settimana successiva dei colleghi del Brasile, se non erro il 15 alla stessa ora di oggi, mentre invece il 19 luglio avremo l'opportunità di conoscere con maggiore dettaglio l'esperienza di Torino. Sapete che questo è un ciclo di appuntamenti che ha l'obiettivo di accompagnarci verso l'Ashoka Changemaker Summit, che è questo grande evento internazionale che Torino ospiterà a dicembre di quest'anno, ed è appunto questo percorso è appunto l'obiettivo di creare, di animare, di accompagnarci verso il summit, affinché il summit non sia un'iniziativa estemporanea, ma possa effettivamente coinvolgere tutti coloro che lavorano nell'ecosistema torinese e naturalmente anche nell'ecosistema italiano, e che possa poi rappresentare un'opportunità di crescita per tutti coloro che operano nella città, e quindi di sviluppo di future traiettorie, tra cui anche la prospettiva della Changemaker Community. Vi ricordo che questo percorso è promosso da Ashoka Italia con il contributo dei nostri partner, che sono Torino Social Impact, a cui va il mio ringraziamento per il supporto costante, OGR, che è uno spazio meraviglioso, che sarà appunto lo spazio che ospiterà il nostro summit a dicembre. Quindi vi invito a visionare sul sito di OGR lo spazio, e sicuramente avrete modo di apprezzare la bellezza di questo luogo. La fondazione CRT e la fondazione Sviluppo e Crescita CRT, che sono chiaramente come potete immaginare, collegate tra di loro, e che sono un partner strategico del Summit di Torino. Non voglio, rubare molto tempo nella mia introduzione sul perché un percorso sulle Changemaker Communities. Come vi dicevo, è un concetto su cui stiamo lavorando da tempo ad Ashoka. È una visione di trasformazione dei territori, dove per territorio non si intende solo il territorio, la città, ma come sapete siamo anche molto interessati a sviluppare territori marginalizzati. Quindi pensiamo che ciascun territorio, se opportunamente stimolato, può diventare un territorio in grado di generare cambiamento. In Italia questa prospettiva è ancora incipiente, quindi è qualcosa su cui stiamo lavorando, su cui abbiamo bisogno di apprendere, e la migliore maniera di apprendere è quella di ascoltare e sentire chi già sta lavorando su questa prospettiva. Quindi io passerò dall'italiano all'inglese per introdurre i nostri ospiti, che sono appunto i colleghi di Ashoka Messico, e quindi subito vorrei dare il benvenuto. Welcome Carolina, welcome Santiago. It's really a pleasure to have you to this discussion on Changemaker Communities, and also thank you to Arturo, that is part of your processes of Changemaker Communities. So it's a pleasure to have you also, Arturo. And I would like to start this conversation with Carolina, that is actually director of Ashoka Mexico. So, Caro, the question is, why Changemaker Communities, and which is the vision behind the decision of Ashoka Mexico to work on Changemaker Communities? So the floor is yours, and thank you again for being with us.
Thank you very much, Federico, and thank you all for being here listening to this conversation. I'm I'm responsible for the region of Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. I will concentrate today on Mexico, but what I will talk about is something that we will expand into Central America and eventually into the Caribbean, which is a more difficult region because of all the small islands and the extension of the territory. So, but the strategy that we are, the strategy is for Ashoka Global, but then we bring it down to our region. And what I would like to talk about is that what we see is that if we really want to change a country, a region, this world, we need to work bottom up and from up to bottom, and we need to do both strategies. From Ashoka, we have been working mostly in strategies that are national for the whole country, and where we go and work with education and children and young people and entrepreneurship and universities, and all our strategies look for national partners and for strategies that help to change policies, and we do that work. But we realize that, as happens, I'm sure, in Italy, because I think we're very similar in many ways. We're Latin at the end. Everything that we do tends to get centralized, and the opportunities happen mostly in the large cities where we have education and we have a faster development. And what we realize, and I will talk a little bit about Mexico, but what we realize is that if we want to have everyone a change maker, if we really want to get to every region in the world, we need to have a different strategy that goes to these metro areas that we call, these areas where we have a density of population and we have people that are not very small populations and isolated, which makes it difficult, but we identify these areas that can be can detonate change, can help us like a cell that reproduces, and it's like viral. So in Mexico in particular, Mexico is it's like a belly button in the world. We have the US and all these Mexicans living in the US. Then we have the connection with Central America, and we are very much a reference for Latin America. Brazil and Mexico are very much the stronger countries in the region. But we also have a very strong connection with Spain. Spain is our second country for migration. So we are like in the middle of very interesting problems, I would say, and a lot of opportunities. But we have the problems in the border, and today we will talk a little bit about this metro area that we have identified in the border that would be like a cell to work with all of the cities that are in the border where we face a lot of problems. Then we have strong, large cities in Mexico, like Mexico, Monterrey, Guadalajara, which are like cities that are more developed for ecosystems. But now we are working, and today we will talk about two areas that are not like the central areas that you think about when you think of Mexico. Well, maybe Tijuana in the border, yes, because it's in the border. But these are like very areas where there's a lot of participation, a lot of young people, that we have corporations, NGOs, we have good universities, and many organizations working on citizen participation. So what I would leave you with, because Santiago and I will talk a little more about the how to. What I would leave you is with this vision that we need to develop local changes, and at the same time work on national changes, and we need to connect that. And that's the vision that we're bringing for Mexico. So I leave you with the next speakers and see you at the questions.
Thank you so much, Carolina. And I guess that metro area strategy or Changemaker Communities is really a promising strategy to create more impact, to engage the local communities. So my question to Santiago is, can you tell us which is concrete steps do you need to implement for realizing Changemaker strategy, and which are your experience in concrete working with communities? And thank you for being with us again.
Great, and thank you, Federico and Ashoka Italy, for this opportunity to talk to you guys a little bit about how we are creating ecosystems here in Mexico. And I just want to follow up a little bit on what Carolina was talking about, how we at Ashoka Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean, we are building communities where everyone realizes their power to impact their world. As we all know, a change maker is anyone from any sector, and this is going to be really important to the steps. It involves enterprise, it involves any teacher, it involves universities, it involves the government, it involves everyone that is part of the ecosystems of impact. So we at Ashoka Mexico realized that for a change maker to thrive, it takes an entire ecosystem to raise that person, to raise that change maker. So I just want to share with you all very quickly a picture of Mexico. As some of you may know, Mexico is a really big country. And what we have been working on in the last 40 years in Ashoka Mexico is trying to reach an everyone a change maker world in Mexico. And that had a lot of obstacles, because there are more than 32 states in Mexico, and each one has their own culture, has their own way of living, have their own languages, have their own way of political participation and citizen participation. So we thought of implementing and activated the entire Mexico ecosystem when that wasn't possible. The credibility of trying to get big strategies down to a really local level was really impossible. So the first step we had to look is that how can we start working with individual cities or states where change making is already thriving, is already working, and that we can be really strategic and just leveraging with them. And if we work with these states, with these cities that are central in Mexico, we can really do like this network effect. So if you guys can see on the left corner, there's a place called Tijuana that is really on the border with the United States. Even though it's in the corner, it is a really important city for the entire Mexico region. So if you guys see there, Tijuana is part of a state that is called Baja California, but there's one that's called Sonora. There's other states that are really influential, but are not so metropolitan as Tijuana. So we started identifying these types of cities. Tijuana, for example, is really working migration. There's other cities you guys may recall, like Guadalajara, like Mexico City, like Monterrey, that are really metropolized. But there were other cities that maybe were not on our radar, but are having a big change-making environment. So we did an entire mapping of Mexico to identify these types of cities through a program that we have that's called Millions of Changemakers. Through this mapping, we found that there was one that's called the Comarca Lagunera, which if you guys see there, it's in the northern part between the orange state and the green state, where it says Gomez Palacio. There are a lot of cities that are there connected that have a change-making culture, but we did not have it on our radar. So we started working with these big cities, but also these other change-making cities, and started talking about, hey, how can we create metro areas? How we can create a culture of for change-making a little bit more robust, where it's not only about that or social organizations are working, but also how can we include social enterprise, much more than social responsibility. How can we get them engaged to be part of the change-making community? And that's what we started doing. So the first step is identifying which cities are a little bit more advanced in their change-making community environment, and how can we leverage them to be an inspiration for other cities. So there we identified 2 that we started working with. The first one is Tijuana, and the second one is La Comarca Lagunera, who we are going to listen to a little bit in a while. But first, I want to talk to you guys about what we are doing in Tijuana. So after identifying this, it was really important for us to have a connector, that person that can really help us understand how the city works, how the different sectors are working to promote, or maybe not promote and obstaculize change-making communities. So there we talked to, we have this counterpart who is Baja Nova, who are laboratories for social enterprise, and they are part of a regional enterprise sector. And they started talking to us. What are they working on? How migration, for example, at the theme is really important, and how can we connect in a theme that is in a topic that is really important for Tijuana, that is migration, to our vision of change making? How can we connect localized problems that are really important and on top priority with change making, which is something we are going to talk about a little bit further along in this conversation. But we started doing connecting the dots, and how we started mapping locally how universities are working with change making, how youth is working with change making, and we started creating an event that is 5 days, which is called the State of Change Making, and we started creating a conversation about what is the role of every sector in creating change-making community. What is the role of education? What is the role of social entrepreneurship? And we started creating this puzzle. And at the end, what we are looking for is to connect these sectors and say, okay, I know my role, but how can I create a relationship with other sectors to promote change-making together? And this can escalate a systems change approach in the region on how we are looking at change making. It's not only universities that are creating curriculum for education and change making. It's not only social responsibility and creating entrepreneurship inside the company. It's how can we create a narrative that creates change making as a culture inside the region. And so Tijuana is starting to become an inspiration for other states localized. So that's our first step. What we are going to do after September, when we are launched these events and start creating this conversation, is that we are going to start doing the workshops with sectors and starting to prioritize how can we promote change making. What are the first places we have to be looking at to really promote and escalate this conversation? So that's what we are looking for to do in the next couple of months and years. Maybe we are going to be doing insights in the society. We are going to be saying, this is what we have found in Tijuana. This is our needs. This is our first steps to creating a change-making culture. After the note that sectors are having this conversation, this is what we must be doing, and this is the allies and partnerships we need to make this possible for all. So I don't want to take up much more on that time for Tijuana. And I want to introduce you guys to everyone watching, to Arturo Aranda. He is the director of the Asociación Cívica de la Laguna. It's a civic association that is in the Laguna. He is going to be talking a little bit about the context of it and how are we creating change-making communities from his association and with the work that we are doing with Ashoka. So Arturo, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Santiago. Thank you, Ashoka Italia. Well, the Asociación Cívica de la Laguna is an institution that was born in 2012 in the metropolitan area of La Laguna, an area that is located in the north of Mexico and combines 5 cities: Torreón, Gómez Palacio, Lerdo, Matamoros, y Francisco y Madero, in 2 states, Coahuila y Durango, in the country. That has a particular characteristic that is in the middle of the desert. Between 2006 and 2012, the region was a victim of drug trafficking. At that time, the area was very affected and lost a lot of economic investments due to violence. It was badly hit by insecurity and the lack of economic benefits. There was unemployment or professionals migrate to study elsewhere. For this reason, a group of citizens meet to think about how to improve the quality of life in the area. After much thinking and seeing success stories in the country and abroad, they realized that a way to move forward the region was based on citizen participation. It was when they created the Asociación Cívica de la Laguna, an institution that through training seeks to provide citizens with tools so that they themselves can develop their own projects that solve the problems that most affect their immediate environment. After 7-8 years of work, we are an institution that has training almost 2,000 people who live in this area. Our main objective is to train them in citizenship, social leadership and social entrepreneurships. During their training, they have to detect and analyze the main problems of the region and then create impact projects that try to solve these problems. After the training, each of our participants go on to form a collaborative leadership network, and we as an institution take care of connecting them with more than 200 social actors in the region, in the area, among which are universities, private initiative, entrepreneurs, social civic associations, social leaders, and government agencies. As a result of these years of work, we discovered that 70% of our participants are active in movements or social groups that create the improvement of the community. We have also realized that they are becoming motivators to promote in other people the active participation of citizens. We also discovered how important is create of the collaborative network where educational institutions, private initiative, entrepreneurs, social civic associations, social leaders, government agencies, and citizens participate. We are convinced that the involvement of all of them is key for there to be a systematic change within a region. If we do not all work as a team, we cannot create a fundamental change. And the time, the work or results, transparency and constancy, and consistency and constance are the reason that have helped us to create a solid collaborative network, and that our work continues to grow in this area in La Laguna. In La Laguna.
Well, thank you. I don't know, Santiago, if you would like to add something after Arturo, or we can go through some question.
I just wanted to highlight something that really stands out to me, and it's that even though that the Laguna and Tijuana are in the same region, in the northern part of Mexico, they have very important differences in their priorities of topics. For example, in the Laguna, it's really civic participation. It's one of their big topics, and they are references in the entire Mexican region. And Tijuana is really a reference in migration. And even though they are both on the border with the United States, their approach to really resolving these much pressing matters are slightly different. And the way that we in Ashoka are learning at this moment is how can we work with different types of ecosystems and not really portray them as the same, even though they are part of the same region. So this is a great conversation and learning that we are having here locally. And I think that's something that is really relatable to what could be happening in other metro areas, for example, in Brazil, in Italy, and in Great Britain, etc.
Thank you. And I have some question for you. So I would like to start. I don't know if Caro or Santiago who would like to answer to this question, but the question is about change making and the strategy. Normally are focused on some pillars, I don't know, environmental issue or educational issues. So which is the difference between a vertical approach with changemaker approach in building a metro areas?
Well, I could maybe start and you fill me up, Santiago. I think that one of the problems that we have in the world, I would say, but I think at least the Latin countries or maybe the LATAM countries, I would say, is that not everyone participates. We tend to back up and wait and see that somebody else takes care of the problem. Then we have this problem of cultures that are separated. No, corporations work on their side, NGOs on their side. The school system is disconnected from the labor system. That we work in silos. We are not educated to work together. And if you look at most of the problems that we have, it always has to do with solutions that do not integrate all of the sides of the problem. No, we talk about it. I just use an example, but we talk about education. And if you really go to education, you think of schools, but then you think of the government that has the public schools and the policies, and then you think, no, the problem is about parents and how they educate. And then we say, no, it's about the teachers, and no, it's about the society. And if you see, it's a full system that it has created the culture and the way we think and the way we act. And what we think is that we could maybe get into one problem and maybe you talk about, for example, Arturo talks about security, or about the river in Tijuana, or about migration. But at the end, if we want to change things, we need everybody to change their mindset. And everyone needs to participate from their sides. If not, we only get like very light solutions on the top, but then we do not change the cause. And what's really causing all the problem to grow. So that's why we think that we need to work parallel. I think it's not one or the other, it's both. We need to work in the problems, concrete problems, where we get people involved and they start seeing that change happens. But on the other side, we need to change the culture. And changing the culture is bringing everyone to say, it's my responsibility. If I don't change, things won't change. And that's why we have both approaches.
Thank you, Cara. I don't know if Santiago or Arturo, you would like to add something?
Yeah, just like a concrete insight that we've had is that it's about how can we understand from the strategic partner side, how do we at Ashoka don't come with a narrative that maybe strikes out as really different from what they are doing and really unattainable, or really like something that cannot be achievable, but how can we create this relationship on like change making is transversal to everything that you guys are already doing in environment, in public policy. How can we really not think about one thing or the other, like Carolina is saying, is how can we understand what the type of narrative that we have to create in the ecosystems that are relatable, understandable, achievable, and really not disaligned from what they are doing. And so the concrete problems that they are working on and how we are creating the narrative with change making is really natural and really is helping us advance in a really rapid pace in the ecosystems.
Thank you, Santiago. And I guess that the key point is really to produce a powerful shift on mindset to overcome the idea of single social needs and having really a broad approach, more holistic approach. Mm-hmm. And this is, I guess, the key part of the Changemaker strategy and metro area strategy, and it's really fascinating. But if this strategy is so fascinating and so promising, and from your perspective, which are the main barriers that we may face to implement the strategy, and also which are in a certain way building blocks that we should put together for implementing in the strategy and in a more effective way. So I don't know, Santi or Carolina, which one of you, or also Arturo, which one of you would like to answer to this question?
If you want, I can start out with the first one, and then I would love to also hear Arturo, that is more on the ground locally. What are other barriers and obstacles? But one of the very basic things that everyone we have faced is collaboration. Most sectors historically have been isolated, like Carolina have said, in these silos. So education and universities work by themselves and have their own type of language and objectives, which are natural to them. Enterprise historically has been really funded by the economic stance, but really the social component has been more paraphrased in an economic way, which is really natural also. And government has been really portrayed in having these really segregated objectives that are really from public policy. And so everyone is working in their own way. So when we start reaching out and starting to connect in these ecosystems, there's already social dynamics that are in play. In some ecosystems, which is not the case of Tijuana or La Laguna, government doesn't like to work with social organizations or don't like to work with education. There are universities that have bad relationships with some actors, and we're coming into this new logic that we at Ashoka or other NGOs that are international come in and don't understand what are the relationships that are already in the play. So that's something that is really important to understand, is that before coming with, this is the way that we are going to promote change making to ecosystems, we have to listen and understand what are the dynamics that are already happening in the ecosystem, to understand what are the relationships we have to solidify more, which are the ones we have to work more, and which maybe is not the best moment to work with right now, and maybe they can come in at a later stage. It's really understanding, like in a family. We know which is the aunt that is really hard to work with. We know which father. It's the same type of dynamics, right? So that's one of the key barriers that we are working on, but it's also an opportunity to grow and learn.
Bueno, me gustaría complementar un poco en español. Santi, ¿me ayudas a traducir para hacerlo un poco fluido? Solo para concretar, crear un ecosistema en donde participen todos los actores es complicado. ¿Quién lo tiene que hacer? La ciudadanía debe de gestarlo. La ciudadanía debe de empezar a jalar a la iniciativa privada, a los gobiernos, a la academia y empezar con el ejemplo a accionar para que todos los actores confíen en la ciudadanía y puedan empezar a conectarse. Eso es lo que hace la Asociación Cívica de La Laguna. Desde la ciudadanía, trabajar para conectar.
I think this is incredible. What Arturo is saying is that to really start working with everyone participating, all the different sectors, one of the key components is that citizens should be at the mandate, should be at front runners of, we are the ones that have to put in place the work in the ecosystems. So they must do this not only by saying and so on, but acting. When citizens start participating in their community, in their ecosystems, they're in Ashoka terms, they are creating change making. And by inspiring an enterprise and educational system, they start looking like, if citizens are activated, why can't we be activated? So that's something that that is, I think that is really incredible to really highlight in this conversation, is the role that individual citizens from every type of role can play a part in activating other sectors to really be part of an active change-making community. Thank you, Arturo.
And I would like to add that another barrier, and maybe it's the most difficult, but if you all think about when do you decide to change? What moves you to change something that you do? If you think about that, maybe that's the most difficult part when we get to an environment where you need to construct. Santiago was saying the narrative, no? I talk about the beliefs, but in Italy might be different, but in Mexico, we have a very strong culture of resignation, where people think that it's the government responsible for doing everything that needs to be done, and that we deserve to receive whatever we need. And those beliefs really make difficult to move people to act. We are changing attitudes, convincing somebody to be a change maker. It's not easy. You need to move them from comfort, from thinking that it's impossible, from thinking that somebody else will do it. No, we really do not have a culture for common good. I say that we think of common good from our door in, but not from our door out. I think we have a very, very strong challenge in changing a culture for participation, for collaboration and not for competence, for empathy, for these working teams and this work with sharing leadership. And that's where we really have barriers. We really have to work a lot. We're starting to work with children and youngsters, but changing that culture, I think I'm sure, Federico, that it happens in Italy, because you are a lot more developed country, but I'm sure that this is a very human culture that we have all been educated in that way, no?
And yes, I agree with you that resignation is in a certain way a big barrier, a mental barrier that frees our attitude to change. So we have to work on this mental barrier, and I guess that the young people are really a crucial piece of this strategy. So I would like to know how important are younger in Changemaker strategy, and how we can engage them, and how we can in a certain way give them the power to lead some processes instead of guiding the younger. That is basically the most common approach.
Yeah.
Caro.
Go, Santiago.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. There's this component that is really important when we are working with social ecosystems, is inspiration. In some cities, we do not, even though we have access to internet in most parts of the region, we do not have the tools to really be connected to what is the new innovations in how we are working with migration, or maybe in environments. Maybe we don't have the tools to really understand and really connect to what are other strategies that can really create system change in a more accelerated way. Not everyone has access to the social innovators that Ashoka has and understands how to bring that to their region. So one of the things that we are working on with this event that we are going to be doing in August is the component of inspiration. How can we connect universities with other universities that are already Changemaker campuses, that are already creating Changemaker communities inside their educational sphere? And with young people, how can we inspire them with stories of other young changemakers around the world that are creating change from 12 to 11 years old? And so they say, I can do this. If this is possible, what is my role and what can I do with a topic that I love? There's this really great economist that I really like that's called Daniel Kahneman. He has this really great book called Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. And he says something that is really important, is that what you see is what you get. The mind cannot bring to create innovation and create like this reasoning if there are no mental components to find and really connect. So I really connect that to ecosystems. If an ecosystem doesn't have inspiring stories, does not have ideas that can be reached mentally, there is no way to really create change making. There is no way to really promote it sporadically. That's why in Ashoka, we are working so hard around the world to really create that from a really young age, empathy be taught, that teamwork be taught, and that through inspirational stories, young people can say, this is my role. So the young people and ecosystems are fundamental because they're at a stage where they have more tools, more motor, more inspiration to say, I'm a change maker, I have these ideas, I can create change, and I can really create this change a lot of years running, right? They are not confined to a sector, they are confined to society. which is a little bit of what Arturo is doing in La Asociación Cívica de la Laguna. How can we work with young people to be active citizens? And it doesn't matter if they are working from government or enterprise or from education, but from any role that they play, they were taught and they were active citizens from teenage years. So I think that's also a great point to put.
And just to add something else is that when we get into an ecosystem, we have like 4, we say access, no? Like we have 4 strategies. One of them, that we have the strategies for migration, on climate change, gender equity, whatever is these very specific subjects. And then we have entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship. And then we have all the work with educational institutions to get to young people, no? But we do have a strategy that goes to work specifically with families so that they start to work with children under 12, working with families to promote change making at home, then working with teenagers, which is what Santiago is talking about, this inspirational, we select young change makers and then use their stories to inspire others. And then as they grow up, we engage them in social entrepreneurship. And then the universities help us to position social entrepreneurship and change making in that age where they choose what to do next, no? So I think that what we're doing is like covering all the society. When we talk about millions of change makers, we find a way to work with each sector. And we it's not that Ashoka does that. We work with NGOs, local NGOs that get trained to work change making in these different sectors. And that's what I think helps to expand, no? Because Ashoka could not do it all, but we can teach the multipliers so that they really bring the change-making culture into the city and the region.
Thank you, Carolina. And I have a last question for you, and after that, I would like to shift from question coming from the people attending the session. So my last question is how we can connect local ecosystem and in a more broad strategy that could be a national strategy or a global strategy based on metro areas.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a great question. That you should answer, Federico. I say no. I think that one tremendous advantage that Ashoka has is that all these strategies for ecosystem are being built globally. No, this experience of Italy working with Mexico and sharing practices and thinking if we already had failures, well, let's learn about that. But what I think is that the good thing is that in Ashoka we work bottom up and the other way. You know, that we build strategies very much from the thinking, and then how do we bring them down, and we are all creating and innovating on what we're doing, but then we have the experience of the bottom down, of going into trying these cells and seeing what happens, and then talking, and then saying no, let's go this other way. And then with this new mindset, I feel that way in Ashoka, that I already think Latin America all the time. We are not anymore thinking of Mexico and Central America. We're thinking Latin America and Spanish-speaking countries, and how do we go about together? And what I see is that we bring that into the global thinking, and then from the global thinking we bring down. I think that that's the great advantage in Ashoka. We have methodologies, with proven methodologies in other places, then we can bring them down and use them. And then we can go back and say, this didn't work locally. And then we have the freedom like to innovate locally. And I think what I always see this like every ecosystem, every small ecosystem, whatever we build it, is a cell. And this cell is contagious, you know. If others listen from that, they will try to do the same. If we get this to be viral, we will have people asking to become ecosystems, you know, like has happened with universities. In Mexico, the universities look for us to be certified as change makers because they heard that some other university already did something and they say, I want that for me. You know? So I think that's we have to take advantage of these global. We are in 93 countries. You know, everyone advancing in their way. So something is being built for the global common good.
Thank you, Carolina. And I love your way to describing Ashoka, that is from theory to practice and from practice to theory. So it's really a fascinating approach we have, and in which theory and practice are mixing together, and this is, I guess, one of the most beautiful asset we have as an organization. So thank you. And I would like to give the floor to the question. And I don't know if in comments you can see a question coming from Emanuele Curti. And it's a very good question. Yes, this is the question.
Wow.
So I don't know which one want to start to answering this amazing question.
Well, you know, I'm not sure that maybe what we need to shift is the thinking that change and development and everything happens from the state system. Why can't we think, well, citizenship is part of the state, not the government, but the state. And I think that we need to strongly believe that citizens are the ones that will change the world. We will change the government. And I think that's happening now with the pandemic. There is some consciousness about it, that change needs to happen bottom up and then from up to bottom. And I think that building strong communities that demand, let me tell you what a fellow said to me the other day, a fellow working on education. He said, if we want to change education, we need to build a very strong citizenship that demands quality in education. If citizens accept what is given and don't fight back for something else, it will stay the same. And it's the same for everything. I think that we need to fully believe in citizenship as the strength of the state and not in the government. I know that the government has the power because we have accepted that. And there's a long way to strengthen this, but I think that's the way.
I don't know if we have more questions from the attendees, or if Santiago or Arturo, you would like to add something about the question of Emanuele.
I think the strong communities must be formed by citizens who know of their transformative power. The citizens has the power for transform.
Mhm. We need to believe that, you know, if not, we will continue with these weak governments. That's why we don't have, that's why today we don't have a leadership, a leader that we admire. One leader, well, I have some, but it's difficult now to say, because we need a society that it's not a pyramid where we have the authority that comes and says what needs to be done and that organizes the world. We need to think that it's the bottom, and it's in the daily life, in our acting, that we are demanding that things happen, and that needs organization and needs community, of course. And maybe I can say what Santiago was saying at the beginning. Collaboration means no competence,
Yes.
no competing. And that's one of the greatest challenges that we have. Can we really get together and work together instead of competing for who is the best and who gets the best, and how do I see things for myself? How do we really shift into collaborating? And I'm sure that we will have a different government and a different state, you know, all together.
And in a certain way, I guess that another key component of our approach is related to social capital. If we can help society, empower the citizen, and give voice to young people and to local change makers, these are the conditions of really a truly democratic and truly responsive society. And I guess that Changemaker communities matter in a certain way is a way for empowering society and I guess it's something very hard in this specific moment between the pandemic and also some tension in society. But there is another question, and what's the biggest challenge in matching communities with different priorities? And I guess it's a very good question.
While we were telling everyone about how we started matching with migration with Tijuana and so on. That's really broad still. Even though we're talking about migration, there are so many little parts and little topics that are inside that grand topic of migration, right? So one of the key obstacles is really how can we align in agenda where all the sectors really feel confident that is the strategies we have to keep on moving forward to start to resolve the problem locally and nationally. So when we are talking about migration, we can work with narrative of the migrant. We can talk about public policy of border control. We can talk about environmental control that has to do with migration while going to the border and so on. We can talk about violence that it resonates of migration. So there's so many parts, and there are so many objectives that each sector has, that trying to get them to really start thinking about what are the key system items that we have to focus on that can create better impact, can really change the narrative and the system as a whole. That's the challenging part that we at Ashoka are working with methodology that has been working on in workshops and so on, to really try to navigate between all these topics to really concentrate on the top priorities that we can agree upon as an ecosystem.
Thank you. It's 6. So we finish our time. So I would like to thank you. I don't know if you would like to a last round or reflection about the discussion we had. I guess that we have a very good discussion, and we stress a lot the strategy and the barriers and how to understand how we can align in different interests, how we can engage young people, and also the more broad vision about the reason why we are working on metro areas. And I would like really to thank you again for your time, and really we appreciate a lot your time and your experience. And I guess that this moment of exchanging are really very crucial, and we are both partners in an OECD activity, and we are very happy that Torino is one of the cities selected in this learning activities, and it's really a very good opportunity for us to continuing exchanging our experience. And really thank you again, and I hope that you will be with us with the Brazilian colleagues next week to listen from their experience, and also from Torino friends on July. And really, Carolina, Santiago, Arturo, gracias, thank you, un placer, un gusto, y hasta pronto. Yeah.
Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias.
E grazie a tutti coloro che hanno avuto la pazienza e il piacere di ascoltarci. So thank you.